I am so sorry. I have a very bad habit of forgetting to turn the mic on. Hello, and welcome to my second ever books month in review, where I share what books I read in the previous month. My name is Danielle Forrest. I'm an alien romance author and YouTuber, and a lot of the times what I'm reading is going to be related to that in some way. So a lot of times, alien romance, monster romance, paranormal romance, and honestly, anything that hits my fancy. Not gonna lie. But let's get started. And like it says in the chat, feel free to let me know what you've been reading. And if you've got any recommendations for what I should read in March, let me know. All right, let's get started. So, the first book I finished in February was Inked by the Ithaca. I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly. I don't know anything about these, but this is by Wendi Gogh, which I read a lot of Wendi Gogh in January, and this was, I think, the last book I had read. I need to probably check and see because she had a bunch of stuff on pre-order. So there's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more stuff to read by her by now. So I should probably check that out. And let's scroll down. There we go. View my notes. Let's see what I had to say about this book. All right, I had one highlight. Ulyan can join us, and I'll ask the Oni to swallow his stoyuk and only return it when the rascal promises to behave. Okay. I just thought this was very funny. At first my brain was like, oh, well, this is something, um, you know, somebody's having some fun time. No, not fun times. So stoyuk is another word for something that also refers to a male, to a rooster. Um, so that's the name for that appendage in the Ithaca community. And I don't know. Oh, I should mute my watch. I didn't even realize it was on. It is muted. No, wait. Fuck if I know. Whatever. Anyway, this story was really cute. You have the general premise was a creature that part of their like mating practices is tattooing their is getting a tattoo and infusing like a part of their essence into the tattoo. And he like does it by accident when he's giving this woman a tattoo. Hello, Dustin. And so a lot of the story revolves around them trying to undo this accidental mating and discovering that it maybe is what they wanted in the first place. And I thought it was really cute. Um, I think it was well worth a read. So let's move on to the next book. So our next story was Rut Bar. This is one I had been waiting for a while. It had been on pre-order for ages. I had read the original, the first book in the series. I don't know if it shows it on here somewhere. Yeah, Heat Clinic was the first book in the series. And I really enjoyed the first book. I was really looking forward to the second one. I will say this book is very different in a lot of ways to the first book in the series. It's sorry, my watch seems to think I'm talking to it, and I'm not. But the first book had a very different feel than this one. It was good though. It wasn't bad. I liked that you had drastically different characters, and oh my god, what was his name? there's this one character in here who is absolutely adorable. Jamie. Jamie is the himbo alpha dancer that is one of her mates, and he's unbelievably adorable. I also have like this sneaking suspicion he might actually be neurodivergent in some way. He is absolutely adorable. He's probably my favorite character in the entire book. Um, let's see what my notes were for this one. I will note Rutbar was on the long side, and it did feel long after a while, but at the same time, there was a lot going on, and the story was continually progressing, so it never felt like it had stagnated. It never felt like it was long for no reason. There was always something moving the story forward. You always felt like everything was progressing. So it you never got to a point where it was like, no, this is just what, like, why am I even bothering anymore? I don't care anymore. Um with this one, I definitely felt like it was going somewhere. Anyway, let's check out some of my I apparently have 33 highlights in this book. All right, let's check out the first one. He chuckles and rises to shower and dress, and I take a moment to appreciate the view as he strips his wetsuit off and hangs it up. God, he's gorgeous. His blonde hair is wet and dark from the ocean, and he's still absolutely delicious after only 3 hours of sleep. I don't know how he does it. No matter what position I sleep in, I always look like a depressed goblin nightmare boy first thing in the morning. Oh, and the next one. Easter sounds blasphemous. His grin softens the words so they're teasing instead of judgmental. Jesus wasn't the only one thing rising that night, I say suggestively. Oh my god. Alright. If he finds out I ditched my, shall we say this, soaked panties, he'll try to bend me over and, screw me even if that means the entire bar has to watch. He's crazy enough to do it. I'd have to use my safe word to get him to stop. And my comment was, "Want to bet it'll be in her office with the IRS agent there." I don't remember if I don't remember what happened here, but it's fine. It's you, he says. You're the bar that's helping the. I grab his tie and wind it around my hand and yank his head down. The fabric, burgundy with thin gold stripes, pulls taut, and his words get cut off mid-sentence as I choke him. I press my lips to his ear. If you blow my club's cover, it will be your life's biggest regret. And my response was, wasn't this obvious already? Oh, this was something that I actually appreciated, was the fact that this person actually understands BDSM. I feel like this is something I've commented on before. I'm like not in this scene or anything like that, but I've heard enough from people who are to recognize when things are more fantasy than reality, and that was one of the things that was kind of good about this book, is that um pointed out during play it's a submissive who holds the actual power, who determines the limits and the end of a scene. And I thought that was really cool that she actually did that, that she was you know, highlighting that, which is something that you don't always see in books that include BDSM. All right, next one. The power he's willing to give me is heady and scary at the same time. I'll be responsible for him as the dominant to his submissive, and I'm not that great at caring for my things. And I was pointing out in my notes, there's two dominants in the relationship. The other can pick up where she falters. Oh, I just thought this was funny that she was like, she was talking about how, you're supposed, you know, it baffles me when people get it backwards and wear the panties underneath the garter belt. The entire point of a crotchless system is easy access. That's not what they were there for. It's a very antiquated system. It was designed when tights, or like God, I it was designed for a time when stockings and stuff were just made out of silk. There was no stretch in them. So, in order to keep them in place, you had to attach them to a garter belt. That's the reason. There was no kink involved in it, so that's not what it was there for. Oh God. And this was an ongoing thing that happened multiple times in the book. When I go to take it, his hand covers mine to stop me. He leans over the bar and smirks. If you drink this, you're saying yes. My palm grows damp against the cold glass as condensation gathers from the warmth of the packed bar. What's in it? It's a very special recipe Jamie and I both came up with, especially for you. Um, they, shall we say, did naughties into it. They added their special sauce to her drinks on a regular basis. And they did it for good reasons, but they also got chastised for it later in the story. Um, let's see. I also like the fact that they highlighted the that the author actually knows what an authentic traditional kilt is, and goes on to describe little things about how um it would make a lot more sense for them to have stitched the kilt instead of making it attached, using a belt and having to fold it every single time, because that's what old Scottish kilts were. You would lay it out on the ground and be this massive piece of wool fabric that you'd lay on the ground. Then you'd fold it up, put a belt underneath it, and then wrap it around yourself and use the belt to keep it in place. And then, because it was such a massive piece of material, you could either have it draping down so that it was just covering your bottom area. You could pin it up on a shoulder, or you could pull it up high and use it as a cloak. And like I said, there was so much material that was easy to do. So I thought it was kind of interesting that that she commented on this, because it's one of those things that I get a little bit. I I've done way too much research on kilts, unfortunately. I never pegged you as a dungeon going sort of guy, Veronica teases me. You haven't pegged me at all yet, I say, and then immediately regret it. Oh my god. Oh. Oh. Uh, for some, a hole's a hole and a mouth's a mouth. He's not straight, but I didn't assume he was really into us. I don't like everyone I meet just because I'm bi. Neither does Anthony. I liked this because this is another thing that there was so much stuff in here that it was like, um, you don't see it very often, and this is like real. This was fairly decent bi representation, and I like that. This was something that was making me think he might be a little autistic. What if I say the wrong thing? Sometimes when I talk, people laugh and I don't know why. I end up laughing with them, although I'm confused. That's a very autistic thing to think. Not gonna lie. All right. This one was weird. So this was one instance this is probably the only instance in the book, I think, where I actually noticed something that was not accurate. But again, this is not a very and admittedly, I've never been involved with contract law, so it could be possible that in contract law they do prefer black ink for contracts. But I have worked in a law office before, and it was a personal injury law firm, and we were not allowed to have a single black pen in the entire building. because it was so important to not use black ink. We weren't even allowed to have them. Every single pen in the building was blue ink, and for good reason. We could tell the difference between an original and a copy when it was blue ink, but if it was black ink, we couldn't tell the difference. So I thought it was kind of odd. And I would be curious if there actually is a preference in contract law for black ink, but I like this one too. This felt like uh this felt like a personal experience. I would never, pens are sacred in the serving world. Yeah, I've been a server. I wholeheartedly agree. Anyway, there's a ridiculous amount, but like I said, there was like 30 something. Let's move on because, like I said, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really good. So, but I don't want to go too long with this. I went like 2 hours last time, and I kind of regretted it. All right, all right. I think this one. Yep. All right. So, Deep Sea Kiss was a sea dragon shifter romance that if you can tell, I had gotten started in multiple books in this series, and another series that's related. They're all sea dragons, and I thought it was pretty good. I liked. I thought I saw someone share this. It may have been like new release or something like that. But someone shared this. And I'm like, oh no, it was on sale. That's what it was. It was on sale for free or something like that. I saw it. I was like, oh, I need this in my life. And so I immediately downloaded it and got started with it. This is all right. So here's, let's get into the highlights. So he frowned at her. You're staying in Norway. Um, this in and of itself is not. What's funny is in my head, because of the way that the screen cut off, my brain said Norwegia. And that's because of a certain movie, if I can remember. It's like Cinderella story, I think. Yeah, a Cinderella story. So in this you have the iconic Jennifer Coolidge um playing the evil stepmother, and she's an absolute idiot, and she at one point calls it Norwegia, and it stuck in my brain and I can't get it out. But but yeah. All right, let's move on to the next one. He hoped to all the gods his ancestors were descended from that she would not panic at the sight of his dragon form. If she tried to escape, he'd have to chase her, make sure she didn't tell anyone about him. As it was, he was breaking about 17 laws and decrees of his people by showing her his true nature. Magnus would probably string him up on the rafters of the great hall by his feet if he learned about that. Their mother, however, she might be glad that he'd found someone to confide in. See, this was something I thought was kind of strange because she has kids that are at least half their dad was a sea dragon shifter. So there's a good chance, like he'd already established that the kids are are likely to be shifters. Like he could smell it. So she was gonna find out eventually. There's no way around it. There was no way she couldn't eventually find out that her kids were gonna like just randomly shift into dragons. So I thought it was kind of weird, this like narrative. I mean, I get it that there's laws and stuff, which makes sense, but I just did think it was weird. And I really liked the story. I thought it was really nice, heartwarming. Uh, I thought this was for her body had changed with her pregnancy, but Eric didn't seem to mind. She like he was commenting on her post-pregnancy body, and the thing is, he'd never seen her before she was pregnant, so why would he mind? Eric smiled down at her. She and Elise propped up on her. She had Elise. Oh, this was me pointing out inconsistencies. And then he felt a wet warmth on his stomach and groaned. Axel had peed on him. At least you're naked. Close to the water, too. It's like just little kid moments. But yeah, I mean, it was good, well written, well edited. It was, like I said, nice, heartwarming story. I liked it. It was a woman who had twins with a guy who was a one night stand, and she later finds out he's dead. Meets his brother, who realizes that her kids are dragon shifters, and then insanity ensues. All right, now this one is the second book in that series, and this one features the brother of the guy in the first series. And of note is the fact that in this series, witches are enemies of dragons. So the female main character is, of course, a witch. She's also looking for her lost brother who was killed in the first book. Yeah. So let's take a look at our highlights. You keep talking about witches, Nia said to cover her terror. Having someone root around in her brain was not an option. She needed to be long gone before that witch ever stepped foot on this island. I thought witches and dragons were enemies. Isn't she giving herself away? Like, I was like, yeah. Um, if she's talking about all this stuff, like, wouldn't that wouldn't only like a witch or a dragon know that witches and dragons are enemies? It's not like it's common knowledge. And I thought this was kind of weird. So one of the things in the storytelling was the fact that this sea dragon community didn't have any internet. They have cellular data, but no internet. And I just thought it was weird because you can also have satellite internet, which um, would make sense to do in a community like that. So it's just strange. It's like missing out on practical details. All right. All right. All right. Nia sat on the bench next to him. So who won the race? She asked, grinning. Magnus snorted and restarted the motor. I'm pretty sure you just did. I think this was a sexual innuendo, if I remember correctly. All right. And so I've been thinking someone needs to go through the clan archives and see if there's any clue as to what happened to make us enemies. I'd like that to be you. I thought this was a very fitting punishment. So this person had killed a witch, taking on, and I thought it was fitting to take on the mind-numbing task of unearthing the truth that led to the calamity in the first place. I thought that was a pretty good punishment. Um, I think in general this wasn't as good of a book as the first book in the series. I think that's pretty common though. A lot of the times, if you knock it out of the park on the first book, you're probably not gonna hit it quite as well on the later books. Um, but it's still a good book. I like the characters. I thought it was interesting that I don't think I've ever seen this name, Nia. And what's funny is I actually have that as a name I've used before for various reasons. And it in that instance it was a shortening of something else that I was a completely made up word. And I just thought it was interesting. All right. So we've got tempted, ensnared, and seduced. So this is another book in the series, or this is another series. It's a related series. Um, so this involves characters that are mentioned in the other series. So the main female main character in this one is a tech witch who has suffered from feelings of inadequacy because her coven didn't really respect tech witches as a valuable member of society. So she was basically taught at a very early age to try to suppress her witchcraft, her magic, which tended to cause problems, which they should have realized. Like I can't actually understand how they wouldn't have realized that suppressing her magic was going to cause it to leak out in uncontrollable ways. And then they would blame her and punish her for breaking things. Like, I honestly don't understand how you could think that. I mean, this is like they know better. They've been a coven for a long time. They have plenty of members. They know full well how magic works for the most part. And yet they thought this was a good idea to just like try to suppress someone's magic like that. All right, but let's get started with looking at my highlights. I'm not sure I can pull off mountain chic, but if I think about it, I'd rather be unfashionable and warm than stylish and freeze my ass off. I I totally relate. First off, I don't care about being stylish. Um, but my comment was, it occurs to me that the reason she's underprepared is because they failed to inform her about the climate of the location she's staying in and did not disclose the location, so she couldn't look it up either. So basically, they expected her to just like show up ready for a fairly niche area of Alaskan weather, and when she wasn't ready, when she researched the only area that she knew that she would be in and prepared for that, they were like, "Oh, why aren't you prepared?" Oh, and it's just like, you didn't tell her how to prepare. Like, I mean, if I was going somewhere, I'm gonna research as best I can, or I'm going to ask about what I need in order to prepare. I thought it was funny that they're like, we're not going to tell you anything about where you're going, but we're going to expect you to be prepared to handle that weather. Um, well, I guess it's better than having no powers at all, my mom had said in a flat, disinterested tone. It should have been obvious. With those issues with tech, her magic has to be tech related. Um, this was this was something I thought was funny. Is like when she was a kid, and I was talking earlier about her issues with her magic. When she was a kid, she had lots of issues with tech going awry when she was nearby, and it took forever for them to figure out that she was a tech witch. And it really should have been obvious, and for whatever reason, it wasn't to them. Um, I can guess that the temperatures will remain in the low 50s all through the day. I put on my best pair of jeans and a cashmere pullover, layering a thermal undershirt beneath it just to be sure. And I'm like, damn, that is a lot of clothes for those temps. I'll be in a t-shirt and a lightweight hoodie. I mean, admittedly, I may put on the liner to my winter coat and I'll leave it open in the low 50s. Like, I'm not cold enough to I might be cold enough to want to put that on, but I'm not cold enough to actually zip it up. I cannot imagine wearing that much clothes at that temperature. Uh and the funny thing is, I'm the type of person that I'm like, you should be allowed to wear whatever you need to feel comfortable. And I firmly believe that, depending on the portion of the season, what you wear is going to drastically differ. So, like, early on in the season, I'm going to be wearing a lot more clothes than later in the season, even though the temperatures might be much lower. Largely because you get used to the colder temperatures. Like, if it's been -30 and suddenly it's 20 degrees outside, I might not even be wearing a coat. It's below freezing, and I might not be wearing a coat because, oh my god, this feels wonderful. All right, I squeeze his shoulder in thanks and follow their boss down the hall, trying to stomp on the feelings that I'm about to enter a dragon's lair. just, I just like that. I thought that was fun. We have lots of buzz cuts here, she explains, and people with straight hair like mine, but no one with such curls. I So this was the hairdresser talking, and the hairdresser wanted to like work on her hair, and I was like thinking to myself, okay, if you have curls and this person just admitted that they have zero experience with working with curls, that should be all the more reason for you to run for the hills. You should not let that person anywhere near your hair. Like, any type of textured hair is often not taught about in, like, was it cosmetology school or whatever. So, like, this is something that's very common in Black culture, that they essentially have to, like, have training on top of that to learn how to take care of black hair and textured hair and things like that. And I just thought it was like, yeah, this is no, there's no way. If I had naturally really curly hair and someone was like, made that comment, I'd be like, I'll fly to Anchorage first to get my hair done. Oh, let's see, next one. I'm so sorry. Her words come out as a broken whisper. Sky, it's so fucked up, but they would have banished my babies if I didn't. This is this was probably the first warning sign to me that something was not right with the main character's sister. So the main character sister had been the one person up till the start of the book who had actually been supportive of her, and this was like kind of a red flag because it's like it feels like somebody who's been in an abusive relationship and just makes excuses for why they should stay. And I was like, someone like that is not going, like, this relationship is toxic, and clearly the sister is not ready to see that, because she's literally willing to banish her sister from her home rather than confront the issues in her coven. um I think of my plans knowing I have to do the ritual tonight. It's the right time, and I'll regret it for the entire month if I don't. The full moon is perfect for intuiting the direction I need to take from now on, and I can't miss. So odd. All right, so this was earlier she made it sound like new moon celebrations were big for witches, but full moons are big lunar celebrations. And new moons are usually better for planning and insights, not full moons, which are very high energy and all about action. Though I guess full moons can be about elimination. So this is me being nitpicky. So, like, in actual witchcraft communities, the big lunar celebrations are always full moons. You don't generally see people gathering for new moon rituals or anything like that, because, um, um, yeah, the new moons are more for introspection and stuff like that. So I thought it was kind of like, yeah, that could have taken like a few minutes of googling and you would have found that out. I feel like, and so that wasn't great. All right, it's a good stone for attracting love, so I pocket it, even though I'm not sure I want to think about my relationship with Ty and Jack in such depth yet. It's too early, and we have all winter to get to know each other. Right now, I'm sure they're more interested in hot orgasms than discussing their feelings. I I was getting concerned because it was 95% into the book, and there was no talk about love yet. Ty releases Jack's shoulder and puts his fingers to his best friend's neck. Then his gaze jerks up to me, his black eyes reflecting my unearthly glow. What the fuck did you just do? I about hit the roof when I saw this. I was so it This is not even a cliffhanger. Like, I'm not even kidding. There was no resolution to this book. There was no I have no idea what the story arc for this book was. I really don't have a clue. And that was the problem I had with the series in general, was that it felt like three books, like one book that had been split into three, and I really don't know what the arcs were for each one. Like, I could see a variety of different ways that you could have split this these into three books, like maybe having it so that each of the love interests are it's as each love interest falls in love or something like that. I could see that. But that's not what she did. I mean, I could see I mean, I don't know. I don't understand. Um I thought this was strange. He's talking about not wanting to inform her family that she died of exposure or something, and he already knows that she doesn't have any family to really speak of. Um, yeah, he was there was he was getting angry at them for so two of her mates had brought her swimming with them in dragon form. She fell off right into basically a pot of killer whales, and then the one who would eventually be her third mate flipped out about it. And they're like, "Well, it's no big deal. She was perfectly safe." And he's like, "No, like." She was wearing a wetsuit in the middle of a pack of killer whales. Yes, there is a very real possibility that she would have been eaten. I'm sorry. That is killer whales are not cute and cuddly. They're deadly beasts. And, places like SeaWorld have made us believe that killer whales are just like dolphins, but they're not. They're predators that eat people and big things that are even bigger than people. And yeah, it's just all right. All right. This was something I felt was kind of weird. Is they're talking about flying someone who's injured um on like a cargo plane to get back to Anchorage. And I thought it was so strange because the normal course of action you would take would be to call in a medevac, which is a helicopter. They have a landing area, so it would be relatively easy for them to call in a medevac. But if you live in such a remote area and you need emergency assistance, that's what you're going to do. You're going to call in medevac. And I thought it was weird that they don't even think to mention that. And that was just strange. So they were making jokes at the stage, and he was saying you should name your business Skies, Salves, and Sorcery. I was like, I really like that. That was good. All right. I know Mary whispers, but Dean gets so angry I didn't want him to get upset. Oh shit. This is exactly why I should leave Amber Bay, so people like Mary wouldn't have to live in fear. And I was like, this is an abusive relationships. So um this was something I thought was weird. The 2 days following Sky's collapse are horrible. Her fever spikes on the first night until she's shivering in Jack's arms, her brown eyes tired and glassy. I rush out in the middle of the night, waking Leanne to find a broad spectrum antibiotic from a first aid kit she replenished last year. Then it's a waiting game to see how her body will respond. And I was like, basically, no infection is that fast. Like, her. So basically, she collapses she collapses from overusing her magic, and she's outdoors for an extended period of time before they realize she's missing. They find her, bring her inside, they're worried about her, and she gets an infection. But the thing is, infections have incubation times. The fastest infections generally are digestive, so they're food poisoning. But that's because you're responding not to the infection at first, but the toxins that the infected food created, which is why it's so fast. Nothing responds within a few hours. Like even some of the fastest microbes out there take longer than that to get to a critical point, which I was just like, no, and this comes back to that general narrative people have that being out in the cold can cause you to get sick, which is like an old wives' tale. Um, in reality, a lot of the times being out in the cold is actually less likely for you to get sick, because any pathogens you might encounter outside are more likely dormant or unable to infect anyone because it's too dry. Like, it's usually indoors that you're more likely to get exposed to it. The risk with regard to infect with risk for exposure is usually has to do with the fact that it fucks with your immune system, not that you're getting sick because you were out in the cold. Let's see. We've pushed the dining table against the wall and removed the rug on which Aiden ravished me just last night. I try not to think of the fact that sea dragons have extremely sensitive noses, and that Mr. and Mrs. Thomas, or Kate and Scott as they insist I call them, are now my in laws. When Maya sniffs the air and makes fake gagging noises, I decide to pretend I'm completely oblivious to it all, even though I'm sure I'm blushing. Let's see. But yeah, my big complaint with this series was just the fact that it really wasn't 3 books. It would have been a very long one book, but the way it was written, there wasn't any clear there was a clear story arc for the series, but not for each individual book. So you kind of got irritated at the end of each book. And unfortunately though, I read it on Kindle Unlimited, so I didn't have to pay for it, and all 3 books were already done, so I didn't have to wait with a stupid cliffhanger. It did turn me off from reading her books in the near future. I went from reading like 5 books in a row by her to switching to a different author like almost immediately. All right, and let's move on to the next one, which is being really slow. Claimed by the Kaiju by Lizzy Bequin. I I don't even know where I found this. I just thought it was entertaining. Let's it's it was kind of cute, and it was cute and different. I liked it in general. Let's look at the highlights. The silver eagles on his shoulders tell me he's a colonel. The black toothbrush mustache over his lip tells me he's a bit of a prick. This is me nitpicking. As you well know, everything that has transpired here on this island over the past few months, everything that we have uncovered, all of it is classified. Highly classified, Colonel Bragg adds. And my response to that is if that's classified, we should need to get clearance, which takes a lot of time, background checks and interviews. Um, like, she would have to already have clearance. And there was a lot in this story that was, shall we say, not factually accurate. Um, without all the distractions of dating and parties, I devoted every bit of my time to my dual passions, geology and astronomy. After college, I went on to grad school and picked up a double PhD in both fields. And this was like I said, being nitpicky. Unless she skipped a lot of grades, she shouldn't even be out of grad school at 25, let alone postdoc or be an expert. Not to mention the fact that doing double PhDs is strongly discouraged. And generally speaking, you don't see double post bachelorette degrees unless you're dealing with somebody focusing on medicine or law. So it's not uncommon to see someone who has an MD PhD. But 2 PhDs is very unusual, and more than 2 PhDs is just movie magic, basically. And the fact that she's 25 Like my best estimate, 25, you are without double PhDs, because that'll take you even longer. Um, you're 22 getting out of college, and then another 5 years is 27 getting out of a single PhD program when you're talking physical sciences like this. Physical scientists, you're with physical sciences like this, you're talking a 5 year most likely because you have research that you have to do, which takes longer. I also thought this was kind of stupid. They were like, take five, and got an expert that needs to like take a look at the object. I'm like, five? It's gonna take a lot more than five. I also thought it was funny that they're like complaining about the diamond drills and how expensive they were, and I'm like, they're not that expensive. Like I'm pretty sure my dad has some because a diamond drill has coated with diamond, if I remember correctly. It's not like completely diamond, you know. Uh, I found this kind of hilarious. I do have a preliminary theory, Professor Humbert said, as if reading my thoughts. Of course, in the absence of a proper sample for testing, it is impossible to be certain, but I believe that the object comprises some hitherto undiscovered element. If you can't collect a sample because it's so hard, obviously it's previously undiscovered. That's all there is to it. Because we don't have anything that's discovered that can't be drilled through with a diamond drill bit. Just saying. I also I loved the kaiju's name, Megadon the Dominator. I This is me. I did a lot of like this one. This story was less about factual accuracy and more about fun. So I did snark a little bit about the various ways that it's inaccurate, like the sharp lemony smell of disinfectants in the hospital. You're not going to smell lemony disinfectants in a hospital because that can cause respiratory problems. Like not everyone can tolerate that, and you're not going to do that. I was also wondering why the hell she's in a secured ward. So like she touches the object and then like passes out or something like that. She gets brought to a hospital and then it's a secured ward. Like she's locked into her room. Uh, and there's and then there's that gigantic of his. It swings from side to side with each step, knocking over everything in its path. It swings to the left and smacks into a billboard, demolishing the face of a supermodel depicted there. I thought that was hilarious. I could not figure out why what the heck inner physical beauty is. Like that's disturbing slightly. Like I hope nobody thinks my innards are beautiful because I don't want to see them and I don't think you should either. 1 hour, Dr. Rowland. I'm giving you 1 hour and then I'm going to open fire on the stadium, whether you are in there or not. This is just classic kaiju stuff. I feel like if there's a kaiju story, there's probably some idiot military guy who's going to open fire way too quickly, and that I feel like this is classic. There's always that guy. There's always that asshole who decides everything can be solved with weapons. I also thought it was funny because up until that point, nothing they had done any visible damage or seemingly any damage to the kaiju. So it's like, why are you continuing to fire if it's clearly doing nothing? Excellent plan, sir. I snort. Of course it's an excellent plan. I didn't get to my position by being a dumbass. I'm like, pretty sure that was sarcasm. All right. I thought this was kind of weird because they were like, "Why do you think you're just about ready to pop, Miss Rowland? And it's not like we could just let you sleep through the birth." Yeah, you can, technically. Yeah, I thought this was kind of weird because that would cause excruciating pain in a normal pregnancy. Little inaccuracies. I might not have atomic breath like Megadon, but I've got some weaponry of my own. As the technician lunges for the panel, I spit directly into the control booth. My huge blob of saliva floods the small space, slamming both technicians backward like a tidal wave. Gross, but effective. I thought that was funny. I thought it was weird that they decided to go straight through the city in order to get their baby back. And they did not have to. They were like, we have to do it. We have to go straight through the city. And like, you really literally could have skirted around it. There's no reason. Um, but I mean, it was factually inaccurate. It was light on trying to get the details right, but it was fun, and it was. I mean, honestly, if you like smut and you like a good Godzilla flick, then you probably would enjoy this because it was kind of fun. It had similar feels to it, only it's smutty. So I think it worked. All right, next one. So these. All right. So this was. Oh, come on, computer. I was rereading some books I had read in the past. Her Alien Ghost by Michelle Mills. So I think I can see if I have any. I have five highlights from this. All right. So this was one where you have the main character is on an alien world and she's been gifted a an old estate that everyone believes is haunted. Everyone believes, and like this is a very superstitious planet, so if it's haunted, nobody's going to go near it. So it was done as kind of a joke, but she's determined to prove that there's no ghost, which there's not. The ghost is actually an alien who has been thrown out of phase by a piece of technology. And she of course falls in love with the ghost. So and like with pretty much all Michelle Mills books, the dialogue drives me nuts, but I love the storytelling. I thought this was kind of fun. I thank them all for their hard work and let them know how much I appreciate them waiting patiently outside and allowing me my privacy within the grass grounds. So she had just had a camera crew arrested for trespassing on the property, and then she immediately went about rewarding the camera crews that had not trespassed by giving them interviews and complimenting them and stuff. I was like, that is really smart. That's smart. This is me complaining about her weird way of talking. So there's so many times in her books where it just feels awkward. Like it feels like an encyclopedia entry instead of normal natural dialogue, and it just irks me, honestly. Like this. Emma loves my cock. I love your cock. She tells me that, lets me know, and I am determined to give you a blowjob. I need to taste you. Not that I want know much about blowjobs because I've never had a man's penis in my mouth before, but I'm a quick learner. I'm restless because I can think of it. All I can think of is how I want that in my mouth, sucking you off and throbbing and jetting all that cum, and I swallow and lick it all. Like nobody talks like that. Like what? Ah, Jesus. I like I said. I get annoyed with the dialogue in these books, but in general, I like the stories. All right, view. I only had one note in this one. So this one is she is from like a very like religious cult kind of community, and she gets sent as a punishment for um wanting to get off essentially on her own, and sent to a nunnery. But somebody somehow people's wires get crossed, and she ends up getting sent to this kind of backwoods monastery. And it's kind of an interesting story because the male main character is a priest who has taken a vow of celibacy and a vow of silence. So he can't explain himself to her. So even though they are kind of getting to know each other and falling in love, there's he literally has almost no means of communication. He's not even allowed to write things down in any meaningful way. So he can't bypass his vow of silence by like writing things down. He literally has almost no way of communicating, and which has never been a problem before because he lives alone. But now with her, the two of them are like falling in love and whatnot, and he can't explain that his vow of silence is only supposed to last for like another year. And so, there's this like tension where they both care. They're not sure, is it like is this a temporary thing? Is it permanent? Will she wait for him? Et cetera, et cetera. And there's literally no one to there's no like the this is one of the rare instances where communication issues in a romance novel where I really liked it. And I think the fact that he had taken a vow of silence, and it was such a pervasive vow of silence, I thought that was really an impressive approach to the communication issue trope in romance. And I thought that was really cool with this story, and I thought it was really good. All right, and let's see, we got the Alien Warrior Spawn. Oh, that I did actually have my highlights here. Uh, apparently I didn't. I did actually read this one. Uh, I I find this book is very strange. So the premise is that you have this guy who's a hurricane. That's the alien species in this series, and he he was kidnapped as a baby and modified for illicit purposes. So they grafted wings onto him, and he escapes when they create a clone of him as a way of trying and making it a baby, and giving him a baby essentially, and saying, if you don't do what we tell you to, we're going to torture this baby. And so he escapes with the baby, and he's determined to stop the people who had kidnapped him and messed with him his whole life. But he can't exactly do that with a baby in tow, so he decides he's going to dump this baby onto a random stranger temporarily, and he asks, the stranger to take care of the kid, and he provides, everything the kid will need, etc. And it's such a weird story. Like the main character's reactions are so strange, realistically speaking. Like, I don't expect everyone to respond the way I would. Like, if someone just dumped their kid on my doorstep, I certainly wouldn't fall in love with them, you know? Um it's and I probably wouldn't take care of the stupid kid. Like, I mean, I don't know what I would do, but I certainly wouldn't. She's literally like at one point thanking him for getting things for the baby when like it's not her baby. You know, it's his baby. She's not even getting paid to take care of the stupid kid. And I keep on saying stupid kid, but like it's not the kid that's stupid, it's the adults in this situation, honestly. But like she's literally like thanking him for dumping a kid on him without warning, without any real communication, just expecting her to take care of this kid for no reason. And the thing is like she should be frustrated. She should be irritated because she's literally putting her life on hold, risking her livelihood um to look after this kid. Like she literally reaches out to because she's a freelance writer and she literally reaches out to her clients saying that she's having to take an emergency leave and she doesn't know if they will offer her jobs in the future because of this. So she's literally putting her livelihood at risk for this kid. And I I thought the Hurricane with Wings concept was really cool. But God, like just weird concept. Very strange. All right, next one up, Alien Warriors Spawn. So this is one this one annoyed me a little bit because I feel like the author could have done a better job with the whole concept of a super collider. So I think I had talked about this a little bit on some of my streams during my breaks, probably my productivity streams. But the very basic idea is there's an accident with a super collider that causes them to end up somewhere else. Not really clear where or when, but they end up somewhere that is not familiar and they have to survive. And she ends up getting kidnapped by some locals who sacrifice her to a dragon who the dragon decides that she is his mate. And, you know, everything ensues from there on out. And of course, she is not really okay with being his mate at first, but she eventually, you know, falls for him. And this is and the story started out another instance of authors really not thinking through the ages of their characters. So Nora, it's talking about Nora was the same age as Katrine, 25. I I just like how sorry, you'd have to be like a child prodigy. I'm sorry. And like everyone is that age. There's two different characters who are working on this super secret special project who are 25 and one who's even younger. And this is supposed to be groundbreaking research. This is not something that you just get right out of college, right out of university, right out of like you know, out of your doctorate degree. This is not going to be your postdoc work, you know? This is going to be and like these each of these people, they're the experts. They're not like grunts, they're not techs. They're the ones um developing the technology, writing the equations, etc., etc. These are the people who know what they're doing, and most of them seem to be like 25 or less in age. And like I said before, to get a doctorate, you unless you skipped a lot of grades, you're probably 27, 26 maybe depending on the degree. But 26, 27 is about the youngest you're likely to be unless you skipped some grades. Like you can realistically, in theory, get through your bachelor's degree in 3 years. That is possible. But still, that still wouldn't get you to 25. And you'd still be graduating from your doctorate at that point, which means you'd still be someone with a fresh doctorate, has not proven themselves, and wouldn't be the first one approached for groundbreaking research. There'd be somebody else a lot more experienced, a lot more, with a lot more under their belt, who would be reached out to first. So I just thought this was very strange. It like took me out of the story completely. I also so there's so one of the characters is blind, and I kind of like so Katrine shook her head. Even though she knew that Nora couldn't see that movement, she also knew that her friend had an uncanny ability to pick up on all sorts of gestures. Sometimes she even wondered if Nora's eyes really were sightless behind those dark lenses. The thing is, somebody who is legally blind isn't, it doesn't mean that they can't see anything. It means that they, for all intents and purposes, their sight is not good enough to be useful in any meaningful way. Um, I don't know what the specific cutoff is to classify as legally blind. There's specific limitations, but it varies, and it varies depending on the type of a vision problem that you have. So, for example, just because you are legally blind and may wear sunglasses and have a cane and things like that, you might still be able to see gestures. You might be able to see where someone's hand is, for example. Um, but it might be just a blurry blob, or it might flit in and out of your field of vision if your vision if the problem is that your vision field is very small. So there may be various ways, depending on the type of blindness that you have. And then going back to the age issue, Katrine's own mathematical calculations formed the foundation for the Super Collider project, and that kind of brought me back, like early on, like at this point, there was a like at first when I heard her age, I thought there was a possibility maybe she's just a tech, right? Maybe she was one of many working on the project, which would make sense. So she could have just been a tech who was recruited, and she's one of the lower, she could have been, etc. She could have had a bachelor's or a master's degree, and she was, she had applied for the project, or she'd been recommended by a mentor or something like that. So I thought it was possible, but then I saw this, that her calculations formed the foundation. Well, that implies that she's the main mathematician on the project, and I just I was like, wait a minute, this is like, is she a child prodigy or something? Um, then in reality, however, it was one section of the Blue Mesa Collider, a circular particle accelerator 20 miles in diameter. In a matter of minutes, if everything went according to plan, particles of matter and antimatter would collide in a velocity approaching the speed of light. The collision would create energy levels that had not existed since the Big Bang. I had so many problems with that, largely because the Large Hadron Collider is 17 miles long. So this is nothing to 20 miles in diameter. Like I don't know. It doesn't, like, I'm first off, I'm not sure. Like I realize now that it says diameter and not length. And so I'm kind of curious, because that's not how how colliders are actually marked. They're marked based upon the length of the tubing. So the circumference, not the diameter. So that's why at first I was looking at it, I'm like, wait, that's not very long. It may actually be long. So CERN, I know, is working on a 100-kilometer ring, and again, that is circumference, not diameter. So I don't know. And I know the super collider they were working on in Texas was about 87 kilometers. But again, all of that was also in uh all of that was in circumference. Like I don't like, this kind of threw me because I don't have any way of actually determining whether that is actually impressive, because it's not in the right. And I kind of got that feeling throughout a lot of this early stage, where they're in the super collider facility, and they're talking about what they're doing, and it just kind of felt like the author shouldn't have gone into as much detail as they did because they didn't know what they were talking about. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I also wouldn't go into this much detail on something I don't know what I'm talking about. I would be vague, or I would start somewhere else and mention the explosion and focus more on like sensory input and emotions and stuff like that, rather than the details of the actual incident or the actual technology, because I'm not an expert on it. And so I do feel like a lot of detail was put into this, and I don't think a lot of it, like, I very much doubt that this person reached out to somebody who works on a collider and asked about these types of things. I really don't think they did that they did. This kind of bugged me because I'm like, nobody talks like this in sciences, like there's unless they're like full of themselves. It felt very much like an evil mastermind type of speech. Um, this truly is a monumentous occasion, Petra said, looking at each of the four team members in turn. Also, why is there only four team members in this super collider project? Like a project like that would probably have dozens, hundreds of people on it. You know, it's not a small project. Tonight we are going to embark on the greatest journey humankind has ever taken, not to some distant continent, nor through the vast reaches of space, but to the very genesis of reality itself. In a few moments, right there on the other side of that window, we will replicate conditions that have not been seen since the birth of the universe. I. Why? Like, why would you give a speech like that? That's just cringy. Also, that's disturbing. Why would you want to replicate the birth of the universe? I'm sorry. Also, every single member of the team is a woman. And I'm like, that's illegal. And especially in a government facility where they're even more stringent about adhering to um, the laws regarding non-discriminatory hiring practices. Um, it is just as discriminatory to hire all women as it is to hire all men. And to be proud that you hired all women is a red flag there. It's one thing if that just happened to be the people who are the most qualified, or the people who were qualified who actually accepted the positions. That's different. But this person acts like they actually intended to hire only women, which is not good. This is me griping over the fact that one of them was even younger than the 25-year-olds. This is me complaining because the author didn't know what collimating means. So, um, they're talking about two particle beams now set on a collision course, but earlier they'd called it collimating the beams, which means the become parallel, and which is just light science or something like that. But anyway, I don't know much of anything about particle science, but I know that those two things aren't the same. Yeah, and this is me talking about it feels like the author is describing something they inherently know nothing about and didn't research. Pretty sure you wouldn't incrementally increase the power, or you would get a chaotic mix of results from the experiment. So I don't, like I said, I'm not a particle scientist. I don't know anything about particle science, but most likely, I would bet, based upon my assumptions, that with particle science, you would probably um you wouldn't gradually increase the power. You would line everything up perfectly and then hit the power at the exact power that you want to get so that you'd get a pure mix of results. Because at each power increment you could be getting slightly different results, and you'd get confusing data that way. That's my assumption. Again, I'm not a particle physicist, so I don't know. I I did feel like it was weird that the main character was completely not paying attention at all while this groundbreaking experiment was going on. She's just basically like wallowing in her own personal issues the entire time instead of like, I mean, I can't imagine that your personal issues would be so bad that you would not be drawn out of them temporarily, at least for a few minutes, to watch this impressive thing happen. I just thought it was very strange. Also getting into the fact that she's talking about fertility issues, and again, she's 25. Somehow she's had enough time to get married, go through at least a year of fertility issues where she was trying to get pregnant and failed to do so. Um, then went through fertility and like going to a fertility specialist, investigate the potential problem for a period of time, establish that she's incapable of having kids, and then get a divorce. And she's still just 25. I am at a loss. Like that just seems like such a strange thing to happen so fast in your lifetime, because most like it's possible that she might have wanted to they might have wanted to try to start a family while she was in her while she was getting her doctorate, but like it would have probably that would be probably be the earliest. And so it feels like such a rushed timeline, and it feels like the type of story that you'd hear about somebody who's maybe in their 30s, not in their 20s, you know. It feels more like that type of story, like everything along the lines, the expertise she would have needed to be a lead scientist on this project, the fertility issues thing, the divorce thing. These are all things that are more likely to be a story for someone in their 30s rather than someone in their 20s, and it just felt very strange. Oh, this is me like commenting on the fact that there's there in these types of stories, it feels like there's always that one person who's like, yeah, I'm gonna be reckless and arrogant. I'm never gonna listen to reason, and everything's gonna explode because of me. But I'm not gonna listen to you guys. Um, I also was like, I thought this was weird. Through her personal training, though her personal training was as a psychiatrist, this is one of the people on the team. She had some first aid experience. She palpated the swollen joint gently. If she's a psychiatrist, then she went to medical school. She has a hell of a lot more than first aid training. A psychologist, on the other hand, would not have had all that experience. But a psychiatrist, technically speaking, can do surgeries. They don't have their post, you know, their training, their residency training is not in that type of stuff, but they've had 4 years of experience with this. So they're a hell of a lot more effective than first aid. All right. For a fraction of a second, all of Katrine's fear vanished, displaced by an overwhelming sense of awe at the gargantuan creature gliding toward its red wings trailing gray wisps of smoke. I just realized this feels like the wrong word, but I really like the picture that's set there. All right. So she was talking about how she'd rather have to deal with a saber-toothed cat than be eaten by a dragon. And I'm like, I don't know. Between the two of them, I'd probably prefer the dragon, because the dragon is big enough that probably it would eat you in one gulp. The saber tooth is definitely not, and you might still be alive when it starts eating you. So, yeah, I think I'd rather have the dragon. Also, the dragon might just flame you and fry you on the spot. And if it's hot enough and fast enough, you might not even feel it. It'd probably burn your nerve endings so fast you won't feel a thing. Yeah, I thought this was kind of weird that Mordred had a taste for human flesh, and the human villagers knew this. Therefore, every spring they would offer one of their people, not a man, for they needed their strong backs for hunting and farming, but a young woman, usually who had borne no children, one whose body would be a soft and toothsome morsel for the terrible dragon lord. This is like, okay, some of my background. from college was in population genetics and stuff like that. And I will tell you this from that and from, research with regard to how, cultures have developed over the years. Um, Choosing between a man and a woman in a population when it comes to maintaining the population's size and moving into the next generation, the man is always the better choice to get rid of. Largely because um, there really isn't any difference. There isn't that much difference between, on average, a man's strength, etc., and a woman's. And many men, one man can reproduce with many women. So, um, when it comes to perpetuating the next generation, that makes sense. Additionally, if you're going to sacrifice women, it would make a lot more sense to sacrifice women who'd already had children so that they had already, proceeded, helped the next generation with providing children. So it's just kind of very strange, very strange. It was kind of trying to justify the virgin sacrifice thing, but it kind of fell flat, honestly. Uh, so this was I like to fuss about this type of stuff. So I took comparative physiology in college. So anytime there's a physiology issue that makes absolutely no sense in a book, I just can't handle it. The heavy rear legs with the double jointed like a tiger's or wolf's shifted into a straighter alignment. I have no idea what they're talking about with these double joints. Not a clue. I do not know what they're talking about at all. I have never heard of that in my life. And like I said, I've studied comparative physiology, so I know exactly what the joints are like in things like tigers and wolves. There's no double joints. I don't know what that is. Yeah, this was a little bit of a mm, um maybe you should have kept your facts straight because apparently he'd said earlier that Scal, one of the dragons, didn't have a scent, but that Mordrag now does have a scent. Doesn't make sense. All right. Okay. I this also me being a scientist, it would lead to stagnation of their lineage through accumulation of deleterious mutations over time. Not true. But and in the end, all that was left was a black sun smoldering like a burnt out ember, and that's not how a star dies. One did not take a dragon as their mate and expect him to be careful. I would think that would be a prerequisite, honestly. If you're gonna mate with something that's like 5 times your size or more, I would think being careful would be necessary. So I had a lot of like nitpicky stuff with the story. I think it was fun enough. It was interesting. Um, I haven't decided yet if I want to read anything else in this series. So let's see what else we got. Traded for their pleasure. This is the last two stories we've got. So this is a Megaverse story where you have a woman who's married to a man who is a bit of a con artist. He cons a couple of alphas and they come looking for recompense. And so they end up taking her instead. Um let's see. There are six notes and highlights that I put in this one. In general, I liked this story, although I did end up putting down the next book in that I tried to read in this series midway. I got really frustrated with it. Um, I will say, in the book, they try to present Gwen, who is like one of the who's the mate of the leader of the of this like barbarian community. They try to present her as like very protective of the women in the community, but realistically speaking, she just comes across as prejudiced. And she doesn't really think. Like she just kind of assumes that alphas are going to do bad things, and she doesn't, yeah, it's like she just comes across as not a great person. Like she doesn't handle things well. I really like this line. I scarcely dare breathe lest it slice deeper to deliver my death. That is such a freaking good line. I mm, that's fantastic. Honestly. So I think in general, um I did not like Gwen. And I like the general premise. I thought it was really cool, which is why I ended up. This is like the 21st book in this series, or it's 12th. I'm dyslexic. Don't worry about it. It's the 12th book in this series. So I just jumped right into like the middle of the series. I didn't like start at the beginning or anything like that. And um, I just liked the premise. I thought it was kind of cool, the idea of a woman who is in a not great relationship, gets swept off her feet by a couple guys who are, who have been swindled by her husband, and I thought it was a really cool story. And like I said, there were definitely some good moments. I did not like the other book that I had read, so I don't even think I have any highlights for that one. And then the last book that I read, um, it looks like for February, was Walk on the Wild Side by Christine Warren, sorry. And this is an older book. This is a book I've read before. So it's not the first time I've read it. And I don't know, I've just lately I've been feeling the need to reread some books. And you can see I did that a few times in the last month, and I've been continuing to do that this month. I've read several books that I have read before, and this one is just kind of fun. One of the things I thought was really fun about this book is that you have a main character whose name is Kitty Sugarman. Kitty is short for Catherine, I think, and she's a lion shifter. So occasionally you have in the story where people get offended with her name being Kitty. They think that she's making fun of them, which is funny considering she's also a kitty. Just saying. But I thought it was fun, and it's an interesting little story because it's a situation where she is meeting her biological father for the first time, learning to be a shapeshifter, and falling in love with the male main character, Max. And Max actually, she refuses to see her biological father as a father figure to her because he was never there for her. He knew about her the entire time, but he never reached out to her. I personally think she was a little bit too hard on him because it did seem to me like it may not have been that simple. From the sounds of it, he'd always given her the means to reach out to him. So I suspect that either her mom or her grandparents were her guardians, um, that either one or both um, had kept information from her that she probably should have had. So I do think that it wasn't entirely his fault. He had clearly given her access to reach out to him, but she never got that information. She was told at an early age that he was dead. And clearly that was never his intention because he did give his information. So I feel like she's overly harsh on him. And I also thought it was an interesting dynamic where she doesn't see this man as her father, even though biologically he is, versus her mate is someone who does see this man as his father, even though biologically he isn't. It made for an interesting little thing because she ends up seeing him like a father, but more like a father-in-law than than her actual father, which I thought was kind of interesting. It was a neat way of approaching the situation, and I thought it was kind of cool. And it's probably part of the reason that I've come back to it, because it is an interesting little dynamic. Anyway, that's the last book of the month. So next month I will be starting with Honeysuckles by January Rayne, which is sketchy as all get out. Not gonna lie. Oh shoot! And I just realized I have that on there. I'm just gonna do that. Anyway, why is that like that? Here, this is better. Anyway, that's all I have for today. That was all the books I read in February. Um, and if you're watching this on replay, feel free to read. Let me know in the chat or in the comments. What did you read in February? Did you read any of the books that I did? Probably not. Or have you read any of the books that I have? Um, Let me know what you read, what you really loved, and because I'd love to see your recommendations on books to read in the future, and maybe I'll read them in March. Um, anyway, that's all I've got for today. I do productivity live streams Tuesday through Friday at 12:30 Eastern. I also do a Alien Romance Sims 4 Let's Play every Sunday at 6. And every other week, I do a live reading of my alien romance serial, Fated Mates of the Dracoan, here at 12:30 Eastern on Mondays. So if any of that is stuff that's interesting to you, feel free to subscribe to the channel. And if you like this video, consider giving it a like. I really appreciate it. And if you want to connect with me in other ways or connect with any of my content, you can find links in the description below. Um, like I said before, I am an alien romance author and YouTuber, so there is lots of alien romance books in the description for you to check out if you want to. Anyway, that's all. If you're watching this on replay, I will be putting a little bit of something on the screen for you to watch next, probably after it's been live for 24 hours. Anyway, that's all for today. I will see you tomorrow at 12:30 Eastern.